Welcome to Bridging the Gap. I'm your host, Johnny Angel, and my partner, Byron Nash, right here. Byron, I'll tell you what, man. What a great week coming up, right? There's so much stuff happening. We got so many people to talk with.
Yeah.
A whole season full of new guests, man.
Yeah, and we're doing some things a little differently, so I'm kind of excited to share that with everybody.
I like it. You got to keep it fresh. You know
Always,
what I mean?
just like songwriting, right?
and you know what? We were shooting a breeze about a whole bunch of things. And today I'd like to talk about certain things, like we were talking about a bucket list not too long ago.
Yeah.
You know, and a bucket list doesn't always mean to be who you performed with or whatever. There could be other things in your bucket list, you know. And let me just throw one at you.
Okay.
Like, you know, I have a bad reputation of never being satisfied. Okay. So on my bucket list is, of course, the next time I sing or I perform, I don't want to do what I did the last time because to me it wasn't enough.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can relate to that.
And I remember walking off a stage at Three Rivers Stadium, and we were working with the Four Tops at the time. And Bub and I come off the stage, and I think everyone in the band thought we crushed it. And as soon as we got off, so we weren't even to the dressing room yet, and I turned to Bub and I went, "You know what we should have done? We didn't do that." And he went, "Aren't you ever happy?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm very happy, but here's what we got to do the next time."
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Do you have one like a bucket list?
So my bucket list, the way I look at it is like, I think it's always changing. You know, when I was a kid and wasn't a musician, but I was a fan, my bucket list was just to, can I be in a band? Can I play guitar? Can I do what the stars did, the people that I admired?
Yes.
And then I always dreamt about it. Like, I wanted a house full of records. I wanted a house full of music and instruments. So to actually be living it, feels like I fulfilled it, but now I think it always changes. It's like, I want to be better. What else can I do?
Yeah.
What else can I accomplish? I think, like, on a big dream scale, it's like I want to play a really big music festival overseas, and I want to, like, collaborate with, like, an artist that just happen to respect and they like my guitar playing or something like that. But it's always, I'm never satisfied. I like the journey. I really do like the journey, because I feel like if I arrive somewhere and that was it, I'm like, wait, what else? You know, so I think the constant pursuit is what gets me out of bed.
Absolutely, and you're right. Yeah, and when you look forward, you know, things you want to do, and the fact that it's not that I don't appreciate. I truly appreciate it. I appreciate the brotherhood on stage with other musicians.
Yeah.
And the chemistry that you perform whenever your juices flow together and make that final sound. But yet, I always test myself. I'm like, I got to do a little bit stronger.
I think that's a character trait too. I mean, some artists are happy and they're like, yeah, you know, I did this years ago, and that almost scares me to like rest on just something that I already did. I'm like, well, then what else can I do? Because at one point, that thing that's behind me was ahead of me, you know, so I'm like, well, then what else is ahead? What else am I capable of, you know, so, yeah.
And then I wanted to talk about our album of the week, and let me tell you why. I'm really excited about this next guest because he's a dear friend from childhood, grew up in my neighborhood, sang with so many great artists, and has done so much as a single artist as well as a group artist. And I'm talking about the one and only Walt Maddox. So we'll get back to you in a second, because we got a whole bunch to talk about. But my album that I listened to all this week, because I knew that Walt was going to be on the show, is my all-time favorite singer. And I mean, this is the gentleman that, when I first heard his voice, I knew I wanted to be a singer. And I can't sing like him. I'm talking about the great Nat King Cole.
Oh, nice.
Now, Nat King Cole, to me, broke so many grounds during this time. Number one, he contributed to breaking the race problems that we had. He was a fighter, and not a fighter like, I want to get in your face, a fighter like, you are not going to beat me down no matter what. Musically, and he became a role model to so many people, and especially to me. And the first time I heard his voice, it was like, it touched your heart. You know what I mean? And I still, to this day, if a Nat King Cole song comes on, I'm like listening, man. You know, like I never heard it before, you know. And Walt, my buddy Walt, actually did a tribute to Nat King Cole in his career. And we'll talk about that too. But Nat King Cole, that's my man right there.
Funny story, my first book report I ever did was on Nat King Cole.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's how I got into him, actually. Speaking of singers, I wanted to pull out Luther Vandross.
Yes.
I feel like he was a game changer for soul music in the 80s. And what I didn't realize until later was how many songs he sang backups on. So I didn't realize he sang with Bowie and all these people.
Absolutely.
Doing like all these commercials and things like that. But it was such a staple in our house that every Thanksgiving we had to listen to Luther. Like, it was Luther only. It was Luther on VHS. It was on repeat. And so this is one of those things that make me think about my grandmother, but then it also kind of like stayed as a family tradition.
Absolutely.
And, you know, we call him by the first name. We don't even say his last name. That's
Luther!
Yeah, like, it's Luther time. Like, all right.
But it's so much fun. You know what? We're going to take a short break, but then we're going to come back with our guest today, Walt Maddox. Stay with us.
Jack in the Box.
He shoots scores! Who is that? Mario Lemieux, huh? Now check this out. This is really Ginchy. This is a Mario Lemieux signed end of a stick, right? Now you're probably saying, how did you get that? Well, I do have a signed jersey from Mario Lemieux. Great guy, right? And a legend, of course. And one of the greatest things that happened in Pittsburgh, Mario Lemieux, right? Hockey-wise, right? So my kids got it for me for Christmas to go with my jersey. It's Ginchy. Welcome back, and we are sitting here with a Pittsburgh, a Northside, a national legend. I'm talking about my buddy right here, Walt Maddox. Walt, welcome aboard, brother.
Glad to be here.
And of course, my
Welcome
partner.
to the show. Welcome.
You know, there's so much I want to talk about. And when we get together as old Northsiders, usually the juices just flow. But this guy here, because I've known him since I was a kid, and he was one of the first big names that I knew coming out of getting ready to perform. And when you'd hear about Walt Maddox, when you heard about, of course, the Marcells, and then we're going to go back even further to the Blenders, but we'll get on that. But I wanted to talk first, tell us what inspired you to start singing, first of all.
Wanted to be working.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, did you happen to, I know you're a little older than me, so you were the older guys that I used to look up to, like with Freddie and all those guys. And Freddie I knew since I was a kid, Freddie Johnson from the Marcells, and Nene I knew real well, you know, and Bingo used to give me tips on high singing and all that stuff, you know how it was. But did you sing on the street corners before you went with him?
Not that much.
No, okay.
Yeah, not that much.
Yeah, when I remember you as a singer, you were always a classier, more, not that there's nothing wrong with doo-wop, I love it, but you had that charm that went with yours, you know what I mean?
Okay,
and
all right.
Did you feel like that when you were on stage?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think, for one, when the whole thing on the Orange House, I used to say, what are we going to do when this is over? Because you always had...
That's right.
And I said, I want to be maybe a nightclub performer. So my whole thought process was, how do I get into nightclubs?
Yes.
And at the time, there was Pittsburgh, whether you know it or not, was second to Las Vegas in the amount of money they paid to performers.
Yes.
So that was like an inspiration for me to say, how do I get into the Holiday House?
Yep.
Or how do I get into the places that, and again, the Blenders, it was like a pre-doo-wop.
Yeah. And when you say that, I remember seeing your name on marquees featuring tonight Walt Maddox, you know, and I remember this one particular gig we were playing in the ballroom, and on the marquee was tonight in our showroom is Walt Maddox tribute to Nat King Cole, right? And I'm like, that's Nat, that's you know, you get excited. I went, that's my buddy from childhood. And we peeked our head in before we did our show, and there you were. You had the stole, you had the tuxedo, you had that charm, you know what I mean?
That's right.
And you know my passion for Nat King Cole, and of course your voice was just incredible, and what a tribute to Nat. But did you have that same admiration for him?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. But not only that, I was very fortunate to meet him.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I met him once in my life, and it was very ironic because my very first record, which was Would I, as a single,
Yep.
and I got a chance to meet him because his music director. I got a free ticket, and this story was. You got to be kidding! This could only happen in Hollywood. In the very first row, I got a complimentary ticket. Right, and so at the end of the show, well, let me back up a little bit. Joe Zito, does that name ring?
Sure does. Yeah.
Well, Joe Zito did my very first record session.
Yeah.
So as I sat there in the first row, and he looked out there, and Nat introduced all the people in his entourage, and he said, "And my music director, Joe Zito." And I'm like, so he looks up on the stage and he says, "What the hell are you doing sitting out there? Come on up here." So I can't. This was the days when we had the PSO at the Civic. What was it called then?
Civic Arena?
Yes.
No,
Yeah.
Right?
No.
No, the CLO you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, CLO, Civic
Yeah.
Light Opera.
Right.
Yes.
Right. But
Yeah.
they would lease out Civic Arena. Yeah, Civic
Yes.
Arena back in those days. And so I got a chance to Ike Jones, who was Nat King Cole's business director. He came down because we were going to have a party up at Nat's Suite.
Yeah.
And so as I looked and came up and met him, and so that was my only opportunity to meet him, because they canceled the party because he wasn't feeling good.
Oh.
No, Joe said the whole show was so tired because they had been working 102 weeks out of 104
Wow.
because he had never played Broadway in his life. And he wanted to play Broadway before, so he was such a perfectionist.
Yes.
That they did 102 shows, and to me that was like God's.
Yeah. He's such a legend, you know. And I remember when you were doing a book report on him, you said, right? And I remember researching him because I had to know more about Nat King Cole. And the thing that amazed me is the fact that Nat King Cole never thought that he was a singer. He thought he was a piano player. You know what I mean? And he said, "Well, you don't want me to sing." Meanwhile, he becomes one of the greatest singers in pop history.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, you did a book report on that?
Yeah, that was, we had an option to choose some things, and that was I didn't really know anything about them, but it was music, so I went straight for that. And that was sort of the intro to that. And that's pretty young. I mean, that's third grade.
Yes.
For that style of music, but it ends up being some of the music I listen to the most.
Yeah.
Because I realize that like a lot of old jazz, a lot of old soul, and the singers, when they recorded, you can hear that like that's the take. That's the one that you can tell they did a whole bunch of takes in there, and that's the one that we live with and that we remember. And so that high level of quality always kind of resonated with me. So, yeah.
Well, it was very ironic because when Natalie came on the scene, and I was working opposite her at the Marriott.
Okay.
No, I was at Holiday Inn, and she was at the Marriott.
Okay.
And so it's like I got to meet her and see, because again I'm looking at, as you say, with Nat, he had such class.
Yes.
And I went over to meet her at the club, and I'm looking for somebody with, as I said to you, in a gown, you know, flowing. And she came out in a leather suit. And she was suave. Man. So someone from Channel 4, they came and got my performance over at Holiday Inn. And so I said to the guy from Channel 4, he said, "How would you like to do a tribute to Nat King Cole?" Now this had to be, my wife is out there, she could probably tell you the date on that, but we contacted her manager.
Yeah.
He said, "We will have nothing to do with her connection with Nat King Cole." They wanted to establish her own image.
Yeah.
And she didn't want to be off the piggyback of him. And I thought it was very ironic because after a few releases, she ended up doing a tribute to her dad, which was what they didn't want
The
to do.
duet, right? Yeah, it's amazing, you know. And Nat King Cole, of course, had a touch on that first. But now let's go back to your beginning. Before, everyone knows you, of course, as a Marcel, and one of the great Marcels. But I was on my radio show last week, and I played a record for our Pittsburgh audience by the Blenders, right? And of course, it was called Jitterbug. And I said, you know who was in this group is my friend Walt Maddox. And then I started getting texts from everywhere, from Florida. Walt was in the Blenders. I didn't know that. And I said, and then he changed. But you tell the story, right? So you're in the studio as the Blenders, and what happened?
Right. Well, back in those days, and again, you had more regional hits than you
Yes.
had national hits.
Yes.
So we were saying, and the guy comes into the studio and he says, "We got a problem." I said, "Well, what's the problem?" He said, "There's a group out called the Blenders."
Blenders.
Oh.
I said, "You got to be kidding me." So we got all our heads together. It's like, how can we pull this off? I said, well, maybe then we'll change our name so that we don't want to alienate the 6 fans that we have out there in the audience. So we said, all right, then we'll do it. Close, maybe just the Blenders. No, first we don't want to do that, but we ran out of options. It's like, well, then maybe we'll make it the Blinders. I said, no, that don't work. So, how about the Blanders? I said, no, the Blunders. So we said we better go back to the Blanders.
Back to the Blenders.
Wow.
And then from that, then you became a member of the Marcells.
Well, after that, I recorded Would I?
Oh, that's right, yes.
And gosh, we got great reviews all over the place. But what happened was the Marcells came along a couple of years after Would I?
Yeah.
And as I said, we had great reviews, but the company went broke. And a lot of people don't realize a hit record can break you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because everything's on consignment.
Oh, yeah.
And so you got like you're selling the Skyliners one, and since I don't have you needed a ton of money to back
it up.
Since I don't have you. And the same thing happened to another girl. So then we started looking for things to do because we ran out of money.
Yeah.
With Calico Records.
Yes. And Jimmy was on that with you, right?
Jimmy was on the label, yeah.
That's what
Right.
And he did some singles stuff too, without the Skyliners. Or was that after? No, that's when he went. Yeah, that went.
Yeah.
But so then you go into the Marcells, right? And they already have a big hit, of course, Blue Moon and Heartaches, and then you guys come on board and you do 2 more albums.
Well, again, the singles back in those days, you didn't do albums.
That's right.
That
That's right.
was a real big name to do because you had the RCAs and the Columbias.
Yep.
There was another story there that I'm trying to remember where we wanted to go on that.
But you were up in New York with them, right?
With the
You
Marcells?
performed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so they were looking for it. It wasn't me looking for it. My deal with the record label.
Yes.
They would give me an opportunity to do 1 song on my own if I would do a session with the Marcells.
I see. Now it comes together. Yeah.
Bingo quit.
Yeah.
And Dickie Knaus, he quit.
He went.
And Gene Bricker died.
Yes.
So then it was matter that Stu said, if you'll do one session, I'll give you a session on your own.
Yes.
It's like, okay, because I had been in New York beating sidewalks, trying to figure out where I could get a record deal.
That was Cool Picks.
Colpix,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, that's right.
So they came back to Pittsburgh, and believe it or not, and you talk about mismanagement, we came back to Pittsburgh, and we were now looking for another record. Well, in the middle of the night, when I tell you middle of the night, I think it was like 3 o'clock, and I called Jules on the telephone. I said, Jules, I get the next hit. He says, Jules, Heartaches.
Oh, yeah.
Well, the only version of Heartaches that had been recollected was Ted Weems.
Yep.
Heartaches. Okay, so they said, come on in and we'll record it. Well, he came in. We had 15 takes on Heartaches.
Heartaches.
And back in those days, you did 4 shows in 3 hours. All right, to show you how fast technology was going, recorded Blue Moon on 3-track. Now you had the band on 1 track, you had the singing group on 1 track, and you had the lead singer on.
Yep.
And out of that, you had the mixer.
Wow.
Today, in 3 years, you can't get 3 tracks. It's like, but going back to the Marcells, so that we had, believe it or not, 1 job on the books. We got the #1 record in the world. And we got so that was because, but the bad part was, and I'll never forget it. It was $400. That was what the going rate was back in the days.
Yes.
So Heartaches came out. We started working. So now I'm frustrated because I'm married and I think I had 2 kids at the time, so I need to make money. I didn't need, they're riding around Pittsburgh with a big Marcel sign on the side of this limousine, and there was not a job on the back.
Wow.
So we got a chance to play in Canada.
Oh.
All right. Believe it or not, John, the job in Canada, nobody got our working papers. No, the deal at the borderline is, with working papers you can come through.
Yeah.
Until you get working papers, you're not coming in here.
Unreal.
Well, after I think it was 8 hours, and they will not let you ride in the car from one territory sign to the next territory sign. It was frustrating because I had to walk, and I think it was in November. I had to walk from one side of Canada to the other side of Canada, and I said, we got to get a manager.
Yeah.
So they kicked around the manager for Liberace, which was like, oh man, finally.
I didn't know that.
Well, that was that was mentioned to us, but
Yeah.
we ended up with Dave Dreyer. I don't know if that name, but
No.
Dave Dreyer was a publisher.
Oh, okay.
And in those days, the publishers controlled show business.
Yeah, sure did.
And as a matter of fact, they said, if you want to be a star, you got to pay dues for 5 years. In 5 years, you had a chance to finally start making some money.
Yes.
It's like, oh gosh, that won't work. So, trying to remember where we left off there.
Up in Canada.
Yeah, okay. When we came back, we finally ended up with Dave Dreyer. And Dave Dreyer managed Brooke Benton.
Oh,
That was the biggest name that he had in the stable. Now,
it's a big name.
well, again, it's just bad management. I mean, again, it was no wonder we didn't last too long because bad management. This is the guy that wrote "Dance with the Dolly with the Hole in the Stocking."
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Well, that was who we ended up as the manager.
Okay.
And so he came into his office one day and he said, guys, I got some bad news for you. Until we get another record on the charts, you're going to have to go back to Pittsburgh.
Oh.
So, and he said, whatever you were doing before this is what you're going to have to pick up. Well, again, I had a high school education, but I had the barbershop.
Yeah.
So I had a chance to survive. But so Fred spoke up and he said, man, he says, I can't go back to doing that. He said, oh, well, for the most part, the Marcells did theaters.
Yeah, that's right. I remember that.
And the Marcel's management, I went down from hill there. So that I then took the position of, I got to figure out something to manage this group. And records, songs in those days, I think at one time, and the trivia question, who was the #1 group in believe it or not, it was the Marcells.
I can believe that.
Because
I do
records
believe
weren't
that.
selling.
Yes.
So that we had a chance to do some things out of the country, but for the most part,
Yeah.
the Marcells was a theater group.
Yes.
And as a theater group, we did John 15 minutes.
Oh wow.
That was it.
And you look at it like, not, if it was today, it having a #1 hit like you guys did, there would be a whole series around you. You know what I mean? And you, as a headliner, you get probably the biggest part of the show. Usually 40 minutes to an hour, depending on, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But when you think about the record, not only Heartaches and Blue Moon, now the Northern Soul thing has taken over, and a lot of your stuff, which people always thought you were just doo-wop. But when you think of some of the songs that you guys did that had that soul feel, I play them on my show all the time because to me it's just like it shows the true Pittsburgh. I mean, your recordings were always Berg. That's Pittsburgh. You know what I mean? And but that leads me to what I want to ask you now. We're going to play a little game, and this game is what do you call this game? Because I never remember.
I don't know what we call this game. It's like our quick fire session or something like that.
Yeah, quick fire. There you go.
Spitfire, quick fire.
We're going to ask you a quick question, and the first thing that comes to your mind. Okay, so the first question to Walt, is something old.
Me.
Our generation always comes up with that.
It's always the same answer. Something new.
Something new?
Something new. A recording of a song that I love to do called Little Sister. And it was originally done by a couple of Marcells. It was on the session.
Okay.
But it deals with opioids.
Oh,
and,
okay.
And some of the things that are very
Amazing.
contemporary.
Amazing. And something treasured. What's something treasured?
My wife.
I love it.
Nice. And lastly, something true.
Something true we don't know about Walt.
I don't know what you know and what you don't know.
We've been around a long time. We pretty much know. Well, I'll tell you what, Walt. We're going to flash back for a little bit. We'll be right back with you right after these few words. Stick around.
Welcome back to Byron's Bodega. Today, I wanted to share with you, I have a Pittsburgh City Council proclamation, which is something that they give out to different citizens in the city. Well, basically, you get your own day. And in 2011, my band Formula 412, at the time, we were doing a lot of different things and hitting pretty hard. And we did a music video using a bus with the Port Authority, and we used like a green bus. And then we also had a song called Gotta Give, which was about the environment and global warming and things like that. Because we were artists and we were fighting for like social justice and change and things like that, they granted us our own day. So April 12th is Formula 412 Day in the city of Pittsburgh.